G'day everyone, welcome to another Toon Under podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's original and best podcast dedicated to all things Newcastle United. I'm your host Keegan. Tonight we'll be covering the Man United preview, the never-ending story for our left wing sort of position. We'll get a little bit about Scott McTominay. That'll be an interesting discussion. Before we go any further, if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're sort of on a little bit of a mission at the moment to boost our subscribers up. So if you could just give us a subscribe, comment on our videos as well. That helps with the algorithm in YouTube. If you'd like, if you know how the algorithm of YouTube works, you could let us know in the comments. That'd be also great for us. But without further ado, we are joined once again by Tom from the United Pubcast here in Sydney. Tom, how are you this evening, my friend?
Yeah, very well, mate. Very well, mate. Thanks for having me. And I think everyone gets this buzz, whether you're a Newcastle fan, Man United fan, or just any football fan in general. It feels like a lifetime since we played club football. It was only a week ago. But that international break does drag on. So with the weekend ahead of us, definitely a good feeling as a football fan.
Yeah, and I think, especially on our side anyway, we had that sort of very controversial and it sounds silly, but a bit of a euphoric win, I guess, against Nottingham Forest, which was the first game of the weekend. So we've probably had to wait the longest for it to start, and I think we might be the last game for this weekend as well. So it's been a long time between drinks. Good for us. We've got a couple of guys on injury cloud, so probably the longer the better for them. But for those who are watching in Australia, it's a 1:30 a.m. kickoff at St James's Park Monday morning, which is pretty much the graveyard shift for us, Tom, on the same time zone. Oh, probably not the great. 4:30 is probably the graveyard shift, but 1:30 is pretty shit.
Mondays, I don't mind 1:30. You can go back to bed. It's those sort of 3:30 is day sort of starts at 5:30, and it's true. It's never ideal. Never ideal.
That's the graveyard. I think I did manage to check out after the League Cup final. I get a couple of hours back in after. I wasn't too keen on sticking around for the post game shenanigans. So as soon as the whistle went, I was off again. So I actually got off all right, which was nice. But it's a 4:30 kickoff in the UK, live on Sky, which we actually haven't beaten you guys since 2019. I think we've played 7 times in League and Cup fixtures, and that Matty Longstaff winner, I think it was, in 2019 down the Gallagate end. So that was the last time we'd actually played you guys. So we have had I'd say a battling draw earlier in the year at Old Trafford. We definitely had our chances, but you guys had your chances as well. So I think overall, you probably shaded the game from memory, but we still managed to get away with a point and a 0-0 stalemate. So that's sort of good.
That was a bit of a turning point for Man United, that first game, in regards to that was a real low point for Marcus Rashford. The Ronaldo situation was sort of boiling up. And we're kind of looking at where's this season really going. And off the back of that one, United did turn things around on and off the pitch.
They did. I think we spoke about it the last time we had you on as well, that Ronaldo was starting to become a lot more of a distraction than a sort of a helpful hand on and off the pitch, actually. So I reckon I'd love to get your thoughts on it. But from an outsider looking in, it sort of looked like that transfer when he left. Or not, I think he was out of the team before the actual transfer went through, but I think that was kind of the turning point for you guys, just ripping the Band-Aid off, and sort of felt like everyone could breathe again, like they didn't have that sort of fear.
It was one of those things that needed to happen. We needed a fresh start. It wasn't working, something that needed a change on and off the pitch, and ultimately for both parties. And Erik ten Hag would maybe touch on it later in regards to the job he's doing. But ultimately, the way he's handled those big decisions, whether Harry Maguire at the start of the season, Marcus Rashford, potential 1 or 2 disciplinary issues, and obviously the big one, Cristiano Ronaldo, the way Erik ten Hag has dealt with all these issues has been faultless.
Yeah, I'd even go right back to the first game, that really bad Brentford loss, his first game in charge. There was a lot of media hype and hysterics about that, but what really impressed me was the next day when he called them in and they had to do all that extra running that they didn't do as much as Brentford, and he didn't just stand there and tell them to do the running. He actually participated in that as well and said, no, we're in this together. So I think, right from the bat, I reckon he's had the club's best interest at heart, which sometimes I think you could say that hasn't always happened with recent United managers. They've sort of had their own best interests at heart before the club. And I think first year and like what he's done, especially asserting himself as part of the club, and this is the way I want to do it, and this is how it's going to be. I think even though you probably, I'm not sure if you'd agree, but it's probably been your best year for a few years, to be honest. Maybe not results-wise, but stability. It's been fantastic, and like sort of his first year. I mean, things can only get better. You'd think, like the longer he's there.
Yeah, definitely. You have to say it. Now, there was one season under Solskjaer where we were very well. Jose Mourinho won 2 trophies, which was very good, but the football and questions are always there. Solskjaer, we had a feel-good season in regards to a decent finish in the league, but ultimately, the feeling at the moment on and off the pitch, maybe not in regards towards the ownership, which we'll touch on later, but in regards to what we're seeing from the football team, you have to say it's the best since the last time we won the league, which was, unfortunately, in our case, 10 years ago, which is far too long for a club like Man United. And
I love to have that unfortunateness. But yeah, so what have you made, sort of looking at the season as a whole? How have you made, and what have you made of the season so far for you guys? I mean, we did play you early, and it was very hard to a small sample size, I guess. But now we've got probably 2/3 of the way, probably over 2/3 of the way through the season now. How have you viewed it as a Manchester United supporter?
Ultimately, and it's not to sort of speak over the top to it or anything, but it's been brilliant. Now, yes, there has been sort of big moments which haven't gone our way in regards to the way the season started. The unfortunate situation with Ronaldo, no one wanted that. At whatever side of the fence you do sit on in regards to Ronaldo, as a Man United fan, no one wanted that to end like that. Unfortunately, it did. You look a couple of weeks ago, unfortunately, 7-0 against Liverpool, which is unbelievable when you do think about that, like in terms of that will go down in history, unfortunately. So there have been huge sort of real negative moments, but ultimately, I think in any story, you do need those sort of bumps along the way in terms of part of the journey to get where you want to go. We're going to have to deal with those when they come. There's going to be more in the future. There'll be more this season. I think we'll get knocked out of maybe a competition, a semi-final here or there. We might lose a final. We might have 1 or 2 other bad results. Ultimately, though, where we need to be, we're going to have to take these bumps on the road. So ultimately, the job Erik ten Hag was given when he came in to be in this position now, off the back of winning a trophy, having that trophy in his back pocket already as well. I think ultimately, from you ranking it out of 10 as a Man United fan, I'd be you've got to be saying it's close to 8 or 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I'm not sure. We'll bring the table up shortly, but you might have just sort of missed the title run-in. It might just be a couple of games short. That Liverpool one and the Southampton one, but Casemiro got sent off, is probably might sort of burst your bubble a little bit with regards to the title this year, but the facts are you guys are still sort of in the hunt for another 2 trophies. So still got the FA Cup. You're still in, is it the last 16 or the last 8 of the Europa League?
It's a good question. We lost track. There's so many games in that competition.
Yeah,
we played
Barcelona.
Well, we played Barcelona, but that was like a qualifying round for the knockout. So it was a weird fixture. So we've beaten Barcelona and Betis. So I've had 2 knockout games. So yes, we'll be in the quarterfinal now against Sevilla. Yeah. Sevilla. We all know the record of the Europa League.
Europa League kings, they are. So, yeah, I mean, like, it'd be a fantastic season if you could sort of keep your head above water, like finish all likelihood top 4 Champions League next year as well, and possibly win 3 trophies. I reckon that's a pretty good season first up for someone who's sort of never managed in the Premier League. So that'd be a huge result. But just even the recent form, we're just speaking off air as well, seems to be a little bit of a doom and gloom, I guess, on social media and in the media in general, that Man United are out of form. But the Liverpool one, I think, was the outlier. I mean, they haven't been going too good this year. It's not like they've been all guns blazing and taking all and sundry before them. But that was the outlier. And sometimes in years you do get a really wacky result like that from 2 sort of pretty good teams, and one team just sort of murders one. Really,
it was very weird looking at that game. Going back, United played very well in the first half. We should have been 3-0 up at halftime. And ultimately, we're in a far different discussion if we're 3-0 up at halftime, just really bad finishing. And that changes the game. So ultimately, we're looking at one of United's greatest results of that first half performance. If those chances go in, ultimately, halftime comes in, we're 2-0 down. And a different game. So ultimately, you are right. That is an outlier. That's unfortunately one of those freak results. You look, years ago, we beat Arsenal 8-2. Okay, that doesn't happen again. They're those ones that unfortunately will stick with the losing team. And the winning team will rightfully sort of have that in their back pocket to celebrate in years to come. But ultimately, in regards to our form, yeah, considering and I'm sure you guys are having the same debate as well in regards to how far along the schedule are you? Are you ahead of schedule? Are you behind? Are you on par? Man United, I would say, now we've got a bit of a unique situation in terms of the money we do spend. Okay, the money we do spend dictates we do have to be at the top of the table or that end of the table. But ultimately, in regards to the footballing job that was given to us or the manager, we are performing, in my opinion, well ahead of schedule. So if we get one or two maybe sort of on paper disappointing draws, okay. Yes, Twitter and social media will throw their toys out of the pram, of course, but ultimately, I think, we're in very good form this season.
Yeah,
and lately.
I concur that we're well ahead of schedule as well. I think most fair-level fans would have hoped for. I think most of them would ask for a top 10 finish and a decent cup run. Now, we've made a League Cup final. Unfortunately, run into our bogey side, which just gets us on cup finals and stuff like that. And we're 10 games out and in with a shot of a Champions League place. So, I mean, I think, most fans would be sort of saying that we are well ahead of schedule. We'll just touch on your weekend. You've had a very, very interesting weekend, and obviously you guys are in a position where you're a global club and you sort of have fingers in everything, and you were lucky enough to have Rio Ferdinand come out over the weekend to Australia. Hopefully we're in a position in a few years' time where we can get that sort of network where we get some of our past players to come out to places like Australia and not just the American sort of tick that box because it's close and it's America and things like that. So tell us a bit about it. How did all that come about?
Yeah, well, he didn't come on behalf of Manchester United. It was off his own back. He was doing his own travelling. He's only here for a short period, just 4 or 5 days in Sydney. Then he's back on a flight to England. But he was here promoting. He's obviously in partnership with an app called We Are 8. It's a social media platform in regards to really sort of promoting positivity and sort of anti-bullying sort of stuff like that. So he's out here promoting that with a few sort of local charities in Sydney. And we got wind of it on the Saturday morning. They had a sort of coaching clinic out in Western Sydney where him and Adam Goods did a coaching clinic with some of the kids, and then ultimately, at the end of the day, played sort of 11v11 charity game with sort of one or two sort of lucky participants. And then Rio Ferdinand stayed behind to sort of sign autographs and take photos with everyone there. And ultimately, it was a quick sort of visit for Rio Ferdinand. I've been very fortunate to meet him on 2 occasions previously, one here in Sydney and one back in Manchester as well. And he is one of those players. I'm sure he's very visible, whether it be a Newcastle fan or a Man United fan, very visible in regards to the way we sort of consume our football content through YouTube or BT Sport, etc. But he is this big star. But when you do meet them in person, you do get a sort of just a refreshing sort of sense that, okay, this is a real guy and he's a genuinely good guy. So a lot of demands placed on him in regards to a lot of people wanting sort of autographs and photos. So he's in a tricky spot, but you can tell he definitely doesn't take it for granted, and he does take the time where possible to sort of sit and have a chat and sort of just sort of soak it all in. So look, to me, in my opinion, he's United's greatest ever defender. He's won the lot at Manchester United, and ultimately to be able to meet someone like that who's achieved greatness at our club, something that lives with us forever.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You said he's a nice guy and can chat when he gets a chance and loves to chat and stuff. Did you manage to get any questions in? Did you ask him if Erik ten Hag has to spend his own money on players this summer, like he sort of mentioned that Rafa Benitez should when he was at Newcastle United, or he sort of steer clear of all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, we didn't get any sort of football discussion with him. Really, by the time it came around to autographs and photos, it was very quick. It was sort of rushed towards the end of the day. We had a little bit of a joke during the game when he was playing. He definitely sort of did look jet lagged and his knees weren't working the best. So a lot of the discussion was around his physicality getting around the pitch, just a bit of banter on the sideline. But ultimately, we didn't get any discussion with him in regards to the football side of things. But we do hear a lot of his content as Man United fans. We do sort of value his opinion. And he has been very outspoken in regards to we are on the right track under Erik ten Hag, but ultimately Manchester United have fallen into so many hurdles over the last couple of years where we have this good season. The manager, Solskjaer, Jose Mourinho, Van Gaal will get us into the Champions League football, and the transfers will stop. The club won't be back. The club won't back the manager. So ultimately, Erik ten Hag will have this great season. what happens next season. Now, ultimately, that changes with the ownership in regards to who the owner's going to be. Will that change
we'll
things
get to that
potentially?
shortly, yes.
But at the moment, Erik ten Hag deserves back in next season. Will he get it? Man United fans hope so.
Yes. Well, let's get stuck into the ownership. We've sort of the last maybe 3 years, we've been through our own ownership mixer with every man and his dog being linked with the club until PIF obviously took the club over with Jamie Rubin and Amanda Staveley. It's been one of the hottest sort of topics, I reckon, the last month or so is this takeover at Manchester United. How do you feel about it all? Like, are you welcoming it? Do you have a preference? Would you rather the Glazers stay? Would you rather the Qataris? Old mate Radcliffe sort of chucked a bit in as well. Which one do you sort of lean towards or hope goes forward?
Where I lean and where I hope is ultimately the Glazers have to go. Now, yes, you can say, okay, well, what if the new owner is worse? Ultimately, in my opinion, after 17 years, they can't be worse. I'm sure you shared a very similar opinion in regards to Mike Ashley. Whoever it is, get him out. Even if the new owner could be worse, we'll take that risk. And ultimately, I think that is the risk worth taking. We've seen what has happened to Manchester United over 17 years, and the Glazers have absolutely killed the club. Now, I know that sounds sort of rash from a Manchester United fan speaking to a Newcastle United fan in terms of our success, but ultimately, they have killed the club, unfortunately. It has gone severely backwards, and we do need change. In regards to Qatar and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, obviously the two names that are sort of leading the race. There are potentially one or two in the background, and who knows what will happen. But they're the two in regards to the sort of way we're sort of viewing this. Do I have a preference? Tomorrow it's Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Next week will be Qatar. At the moment, I'm leaning towards Qatar. I see a little bit more sort of not guaranteed success, but I can see a path to success straight away, and sort of infrastructure changes in regards to our stadium's fallen apart. The most iconic ground in England, it's a disgrace in terms of what's happened to Old Trafford. The Glazers haven't touched it in 17 years. And I'm just thinking, ultimately, I do think Qatar come in and potentially address the stadium, which is a big thing for Man United fans. And I do think that addressing the stadium out of Qatar's back pocket will allow the club to sort of potentially sort of spend what it makes in the transfer market. What Sir Jim Ratcliffe's motives are if he was to take over the club, I'm not sure. I'm sure he has the best interests, but I think that's potentially more of a long-term thing in terms of a sort of a stable sort of process where I think Qatar, like whether it be Saudi Arabia or Newcastle or Roman Abramovich, and all very sort of just point to if Qatar come in, it's going to be a very quick fix. Now that quick fix would be a positive one, but it'll be sort of a drastic change overnight. I think a lot of Man United fans are siding on that side of things at the moment. But ultimately, it does come with questions, which I'm sure you had the same questions a year or two ago in regards to your takeover. Manchester City had their issues as well. Manchester United fans, we're going to have to deal with those questions as well. And I think football makes hypocrites of all of us. I remember when Chelsea came in terms of Roman Abramovich was saying oil money, this and that. Same thing as Manchester City. That could never be us. Here we are in 2023 almost begging for it. We need that sort of money coming in. So it is one of those things we do have to hold our hands up, and ultimately we could turn it into a political debate and say, is this right? Is this wrong? We're here as football fans. Now, yes, we're all hypocrites, but we can't control that. I think both sides, whatever fence, can sort of educate each other on certain issues, but ultimately you do hope football can provide a bit of a sort of a tool to bring people together and bring two sides together and sort of fix things for the better. But at the moment, where do I sit on things? I would lean towards Qatar, potentially being the favourites, obviously, and a preference. I would prefer Qatar. If Sir Jim Ratcliffe takes over, I'm not losing any sleep. I'm fully welcoming him to the club over the Glazer family.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you just said then was pretty much what we'd gone through over the last 2 years as Newcastle fans, because our stadium was derelict in some spots. Like Mike Ashley hadn't spent a cent on it for the same for 17 years or 14 years, however long he had the club. And one of the first things the United did was sort of clean everything up. There was pigeon shit all over the toilets and everything like that that'd never been cleaned, but they cleaned it in the off season. They've done a nice little renovation, not a little renovation, but sort of cleaned up the corporate areas, make them look a lot nicer, so they actually look like corporate areas now, not just a room where you sort of get wined and dined. Paint, like painted the whole place so it looks new and stuff like that. And like you said, they're just the easy wins at the start that you can sort of do to especially get the fans on
I
side.
think you can get easy wins in regards to the Glazers. One of the big, well, there's many issues, but the Glazers' huge issue with Manchester United fans, in 2005 they took over. They've communicated with the fans 3 times. 2 times have been apologies. The last one being in regards to Super League, they came out and apologised for that. And the third one, I forget what the first one was. It was probably the takeover in and around their plans for the club, saying, hang on, it's not going to be as bad as everyone thought. They communicated then a couple of years ago in regards to Super League, they apologised. And then this one communicated that they're putting the club up for sale. There's been no communication. So Qatar could come in or Sir Jim Ratcliffe could come in and they can do nothing. But ultimately, I think what they will do will be a very easy win. They'll address the fans and say, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. And the Glazers simply have never done that. And there are so many easy wins for new owners. No matter what they do in the future, they can come in and get fans on side very quickly.
Yeah, 100%. And like that's like our owners are very open and they communicate a lot with the fans and they're active on Twitter and social media, both with the fans and with each other as well. And I guess it makes you feel a part of the club. Like they're talking to you and sometimes they engage with just random people on social media and stuff like that. And they feel like they're just regular people who they love the club now, they've bought the club and they just want what's best for everyone. They don't have that. And I still maintain that day that the takeover went through, the celebrations were more for Mike actually leaving than PIF actually owning the club. Like you said, it wouldn't matter who took it over, but they were just happy that he was gone. And when that day comes, you feel, I don't know, like you've got your club back again in a way because you're going to get someone who actually cares about the club and is going to invest in the club and make it as good as it can possibly be, rather than especially for us, it was just try and exist, try and stay in the Premier League with as little outlay and spend as humanly possible. So yeah, I definitely sort of back you in there, and that's sort of one thing you can look forward to. And then with regards to what was I going to say? I've lost my train of thought. Oh, the sports washing and your owners and things like that. Like where I did juggle with it, obviously when it come in and things like that. But where I ultimately landed was I didn't have a choice that Mike Ashley owned the club and done nothing. Like I couldn't do anything about that. And PIF come in with all the Saudi Arabia sort of atrocities and the human rights and things like that. I can't do anything about that either. Like I just support my club.
I think it's hard, but as a football fan, I think you do need to just, unfortunately, look, we can talk about it, we can address issues in whatever platform, but ultimately we have no say in this. And ultimately, I can sit here and say, okay, Qatar are coming in, and ultimately it is sports washing. Qatar buying Manchester United, they're painting it as Sheikh Jassim in terms of one guy, one individual banker, and it's just him personally. It's not. It might be, and if it is, that's great. Yeah. Just one rich guy from Qatar, and it'll be no issue. Ultimately, we do know there are ties to the government, and obviously this is Qatar. And ultimately, I'm sure you're having the same debates in regards to PIF and Saudi Arabia and PSG and Qatar and Abu Dhabi and Sheikh Mansour, all these discussions. But ultimately, as I said, football makes hypocrites of us all. I'm sure I'm making decisions in terms of what I buy from the grocery store. I'm sure Qatar have investment in that. In terms of, am I a hypocrite with that? Am I buying an iPhone? Yes, I am. Am I buying Nike shoes, how they're made, sort of thing? Yes. So ultimately, I can't sit here and take the high ground and say, okay, I'm not going to support the club because Qatar own them. Ultimately, Qatar have their fingers in the pie everywhere around the world. And I'm just thinking, they're one of those things you do have to, again, highlight issues and address issues when they're needed. And I think topics do need to be talked about. But ultimately, we're football fans for 90 minutes on a Saturday. That's where our focus should be.
Yeah, all you want to do is love your club. Like it doesn't matter who's in charge. All you want to do is love your club and watch it succeed. So, like you can't control anything else. Like you can't.
I think the frustrating thing for Man United fans, I'm sure maybe you had the same feeling as well in terms of the banter we've thrown to other clubs for having sort of owners like this, like Manchester City and then Chelsea and PSG. Well, PSG potentially the same owners, depends how you look at it. So we've always pointed to them and said, "Oh, that could be never our club. That would never be us." It could be. So I think that's where a lot of the frustration and sort of balancing act for Man United fans is sort of fallen into.
Yeah, the block button on Twitter might be getting a hiding if this goes through. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll just bring up the table here. It's a very interesting game, isn't it? I mean, given we've really struggled, especially in the league since we come back from the World Cup. We were on a tear before we broke for the World Cup, and half our fan base thought it was a good thing. We can recharge our batteries and go again, and half the fans thought, well, this is going to be really bad because it sort of halted our momentum and things like that. But the last couple of weeks, we've really bounced back. We've had 2 really good wins, which has put us back up to 5th. Now, it's actually strange I'm not sure Spurs, but they're a bit Spursy, as we both know and most people know as well. But we're a big chance to go 3rd with a win. It seems really crazy. It seems like you guys have had a lot better season than us, but yeah, for a win to go 3rd would be huge for us. What did you think about that? Does it surprise you that we're only a game behind?
Yeah, it's always the main surprise for me is how Spurs are still there. Look, I know they played 2 extra games, but every time I turn the TV on, Spurs are losing. I do not know how they've sort of racked up these points. I'm sure you could go back and somewhere that maybe they're getting 2 points for a draw and maybe 1 point for a loss.
Yeah.
How they're up there, I have no idea. But yeah, am I surprised Newcastle there? Yeah, probably. In regards to how close it is, it's 1 game. As I say, you win, you do go ahead of us in regards to that goal difference. Ultimately, though, in regards to Man United's view of this game, obviously we do want to win the game, but ultimately it's probably, besides our cup games in regards to FA Cup and Europa League, we do have Chelsea later on in the season. We do have Tottenham later on in the season. Ultimately, I do think this is probably our biggest game left this season, which we don't often say that about Newcastle, but this is the deal now in 2023. And I'd say it's probably our biggest game left of the season. So if Man United can get a draw in this game, I don't know. I would say it's still a decent result for Newcastle as well. In regards to, you don't really need to look at Man United, you need to look at Spurs. And yeah, it is a huge game. Obviously, in terms of Sky Sports, love a top 4 battle in regards to the narrative around it. And unfortunately, it's not a discussion between the teams chasing the title. But in that top 4 race, this is a huge game. I think City have a big game as well. City play Liverpool, so potentially Liverpool.
Yeah.
So if Liverpool drop points there, well, let's say hypothetical, fingers crossed this doesn't happen for our case, but you beat us, you go to 50 points. 8 points ahead of Liverpool, which is, look, it's still quite a long way to go. But in teams, whether us over you or you over 6th place, can start to create a bit of a gap.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the fixtures. Who Tottenham have got? I can't find it.
Tottenham's in a weird spot, having played 2 extra games though.
Yeah, I don't think maybe they're not playing this weekend. This is one of the weekends we actually get one back on there, but. Yeah, just sort of echoing what you said. They all, like you said earlier, they always feel big games. Newcastle versus Manchester United, given the history of the 2 clubs together and things like that. But they haven't really been big games. They've just felt like big games in the warm-up because everyone plays sort of what had happened more so during the 90s and maybe early 2000s and stuff like that. But this is genuinely a big game with sort of big ramifications on the result, which we sort of probably really haven't been involved in any games like that for a long, long time. I mean, we've had a couple of relegation 6-pointers, I guess you could call them, in the last few years, which have been big games in their own right that we were lucky enough to sort of get the results we needed and get back sort of out of the shit. But it is a strange sort of feeling. And we did, I think Eddie Howe had spoken about pre-League Cup final and sort of post-League Cup final that we did sort of struggle with that occasion, and all these people who hadn't sort of played. I think Kieran Trippier might have been the only one who had actually played in a big final like that before. Nick Pope had been on the bench a few times for England for big games, but not actually been on the pitch. So there was a sort of a distraction, I guess, and leading up to it, and then the game, there was a big come down sort of after the game as well. Like, we did sort of take a few games to pick ourselves back up and dust ourselves off and get back on the horse again. So hopefully we did, and then the international break comes and we've sort of been halted again. So it is a massive game. We'll start. I might bring up your team here, Tom. You can go through that yourself, and it is very hard, especially with the amount of international players that are away. Hopefully they come back in good health. We're probably both lucky. We didn't have that many anyway, but we're both lucky that we are later on in the game, so the players do get another day or two sort of to get back in and acclimatise and get their legs back under them after potentially some long flights and stuff like that. But I'll let you go through this side, mate, and I might just pull you up maybe halfway through when we get to a certain Scottish Spain master.
Well, it could be Spanish, Spanish, let alone Scottish. But look, you're right in regards to it's very hard for a Man United team to be picked after international break in regards to obviously the players coming back from South America. So you've got the travel to sort of factor in. Obviously, one or two players under injury cloud, which throws a bit of a spanner. So in regards to David De Gea, obviously plays. Rafael Varane has retired from international football, so he's one player we've sort of benefited from in regards to the international break. So he definitely will start. Lisandro Martinez has been in Argentina, so again, he walks into the team next to Rafael Varane. Is there a case where he maybe comes back, maybe not 100% potentially, and then obviously you do throw, unfortunately, maybe from a Man United point of view, maybe Harry Maguire or Victor Lindelof in there, but I think it'll be Martinez, but he's obviously come back from South America, so you never know. Luke Shaw obviously got sent off for England, so he'll be fighting fit, ready to go. A left back, Wan-Bissaka and Dalot, flip of a coin. 1 week Man United fans want Wan-Bissaka, next week they want Diogo Dalot. I think in regards to the way this game will play out, I think we saw in the League Cup the one player who, for Man United, who had a below par game, or below par half probably, was Diogo Dalot against St. Maximin. So I think Wan-Bissaka comes in there a little bit more defensive cover. Going to midfield, Sabitzer scored a couple of goals for Austria in the international break, but did pick up a potential bit of an injury. So he didn't play the second game, but it looks like he'd be okay. But again, under a little bit of an injury cloud. If he's not ready, I think Fred comes in, but I think it will be Sabitzer. And obviously, Scott McTominay, which we'll get into in a little bit. I think, look, there's a very real situation. It could be Sabitzer and Fred. Ultimately, you can't drop McTominay after 2 goals or 4 goals. 2 goals against Spain and then 4 goals over the weekend. So I think he plays. And I think ultimately in this position or this type of game, he will go McTominay over Fred with the absence of Casemiro, which is a huge loss for us. Then in terms of that front four, it picks itself except for Anthony on the right. Again, like Martinez coming back from South America, you don't know. So if it's not Anthony, it'll be Jadon Sancho. But Weghorst picks himself. I think he started 19 games in a row or something, which is crazy. Bruno Fernandes will obviously play, and Marcus Rashford, he's not injured. Look, he might be. Who knows? He's not injured in my opinion, but he's back at Carrington training. I expect him to play.
Yeah, we've seen this Rashford injury situation before a Newcastle game before, so none of us are getting fooled by his injury. Forgive my ignorance. Did Fred go away with Brazil, or was he one of the ones that weren't?
I have a feeling he didn't. Usually he plays it next to Casemiro in Brazil. Usually partners Casemiro in the Brazil midfield. I have a feeling, and I should know this as a Man United fan, but I don't think he got called up, and I'm not sure the reason is that. So that is where potentially leans to maybe he does sort of is fresh and ready to go. So again, that midfield too, that could be any combination. That could be McTominay and Fred, Sabitzer and Fred, Sabitzer and McTominay, who knows. I just think off the back of this morning as well, the Scotsman, which we'll get into, I think he does replace Casemiro over Fred.
Yeah, I did read something, especially with our Bruno. He wasn't called up. The new coach was looking for, I think he was going to sort of go, I think he was leaning towards more Brazilian-based players for this.
Actually, to be honest, I don't know if even Anthony travelled. I know Casemiro played because Casemiro was the captain, but he's obviously not playing. So even Anthony's situation, I should know this. I don't take too much note of the internationals, but Fred was a very interesting one.
Yeah, so we've been clamouring for Big Joe Linton to be selected in the Brazil squad for probably the best part of 12 months now, and it seems like the old manager wasn't his biggest fan. He's sort of stuck with his tried and tested, and the new manager, I think a few Newcastle fans were hoping that he was going to get that international call-up he probably deserved. But, yeah, when the squad came out, I think I did read something why he wasn't picked was it was going to lean more towards the Brazilian sort of base players for this one. So that would make sense if Fred or Anthony didn't go as well. We'll get to the man of the moment then. He's probably the most divisive player spoken about Newcastle fans that doesn't actually play for Newcastle at the moment. So it's Scott McTominay. I obviously follow you on Twitter. I know you are an absolute massive fan of Scott. I suppose the easy question is why? Why are you a fan of him? What's he good at?
Look, he's a very good player. People don't give him the credit for that. He's a very good footballer. Now, yes, in terms of Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes and all these players, is he at that level? Of course not. Okay, but he still plays professional football, international level, and has contributed to Manchester United over the last 5 or 6 years. He's a very good footballer, ultimately. Now, Manchester United, since Scott McTominay came in at the end of the 2017 season, Jose Mourinho's first season, he's made his debut. Since that time, it's been a very sort of toxic sort of culture amongst the Man United fan base towards these players. Now, every single player, even the players we love who give 100%, Bruno Fernandes, players like that, Marcus Rashford, Scott McTominay is the only player. Now, goalkeepers are hard to quantify work ethic in regards to David De Gea. How much can you say? Did he give his all? It's goalkeepers very hard. On the pitch, the only player, Bruno Fernandes, we saw a couple of weeks ago, gives his all for Man United 100%. There are times he can pinpoint a game. No, he didn't give his all. I remember play against Liverpool, went past him, Bruno Fernandes stopped chasing. Scott McTominay is the only player who is 100% of the time always given 100% effort. And for me, that should be a minimum requirement, but unfortunately it hasn't been at Manchester United. So he has my respect for that because other players haven't done that. And ultimately, Scott McTominay gives us the minimum demand sort of we ask for from these players. So ultimately, I have a huge respect for Scott McTominay. I've been fortunate enough to meet him as well here in pre-season. Great guy. And ultimately, those things do play a part in regards to maybe I defend him a little bit more. But ultimately, in regards to him as a player, look, he divides opinion amongst Newcastle fans who join the debate in regards to Man United fans. Maybe even against Man United fans, it's maybe lopsided against him. Which I find a shame. But what the main thing he has going against him is he's not a number 6, but ultimately there's been such a lack of sort of quality in midfield over the years. There has been no number 6, so ultimately the managers have had to pick, okay, who's going to play in that position. Now, Jose Mourinho, Ralph Rangnick, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and now even Erik ten Hag have been given the choice of Fred or McTominay to sort of pick up the ball off the back four. You can't do. Fred is good in certain areas of the pitch, and Fred is a valuable asset to the team. But you can't have Fred doing that. It's definitely not Scott McTominay's game, though. But he's trusted more than Fred. So Scott McTominay has to come and do that role. It's simply not his game. You see for Scotland, put him up around the opposition box, he'll grab you goals. That's not to say he should be playing over more advanced midfielders, far from it. But ultimately, that is his game. Obviously, getting in the box, affecting sort of games in and around that area of the pitch. He's a sort of old-fashioned number 8, a box-to-box midfield at the moment. You ask him to come and dictate play, especially away at Anfield or away at the Etihad, it's simply not his game. He doesn't possess that, but there's no one else. So the managers put him in there, and it's just not his game, and he suffers from that. The 2 or 3 times a season he's put in the number 8 position, he dominates the games. He's really effective. That doesn't happen, and that doesn't mean he should be starting at Manchester United in that area of the pitch. But in terms of a squad player, no, I think he's an absolutely brilliant squad player. Now, you guys sort of would have a different need for Scott McTominay and a different reasoning to buy him over why Manchester United should be keeping him or selling him. But he gets, in my opinion, and that is what it is, a game of opinions. In my opinion, he's very hard done by Man United fans, and a lot of frustration is sort of pointed to him where it should be pointed elsewhere. I think he's given his all for Manchester United. He's not good enough to sort of lead us to a Champions League or a Premier League, far from it. But he's very much good enough to contribute to Man United. So I would like to see him stay. If he is to leave, it does look like it is potentially Newcastle. And in my opinion, I think it would be a very good signing for Newcastle.
So what, having said all that, and you've pumped his tyres up and stuff like that, where does he let himself down then? Is the criticism that he plays in that sort of number 6 role, and
he's not confident. He's not confident going to get that ball. Like in terms of, you can picture a midfielder, whether I would look at a Michael Carrick or Andrea Pirlo, or you look at Luka Modric now. In terms of someone, Casemiro at Manchester United now, who maybe has highlighted issues with McTominay because Casemiro sort of those weaknesses McTominay shows, those Casemiro strengths. So maybe that highlights a lot of the discussion around him. He doesn't want to go get the ball. So in that area of the pitch, when Varane or Martinez or Luke Shaw or David De Gea have the ball, McTominay doesn't want to go there. So he sort of hides a little bit. He says, no, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to go get the ball in that area of the pitch. And ultimately, you do need someone there. And Scott McTominay doesn't have the greatest passing range or past sort of decision-making in that area of the pitch. When he gets the ball, not to be critical, but he passes it sideways or backwards. He's very safe with his passing, where you see Casemiro or a sort of a world-class player to get the ball and they pump it forward. They sort of, or not pump it, but they get the ball forward quickly. They find that right pass.
Going your way.
Where Scott McTominay simply doesn't have that in his locker. Now, you put him at number 8, you put him in sort of in around the opposition box. That's not his game. He doesn't have to dictate play. He's very physical. He always wins his one-on-one battles, especially on the floor. And I think ultimately that's where he can impact games. But his weaknesses are his confidence on the ball, especially in sort of tight areas, sort of in that sort of defensive third of the pitch. It's a big weakness of his game. But I would say don't buy him as a number 6. Buy him as your number 8, whether that's a starting number 8 or a squad player. That's where I'd be looking to use him.
Yeah, which it sort of does make sense. Like if you put guys in positions they don't feel comfortable, they're scared to make that mistake. And like you said, that's probably why he does play them sideways, backwards passes, because that's the easy one for him. He doesn't want to make that error, especially in that area of the pitch where one turnover could lead to a goal. But if he's further up the field, he's a lot more confident. He knows if you turn the ball over, I've still got plenty of room to defend behind me and things like that. So I guess the big question is, what's he worth? Because this has been a real hotbed of topics against Newcastle. For Newcastle United fans. I think they have been a bit put off by the sort of £15 million loan fee that was for Jesse Lingard in January last year for 6 months. And I don't expect Manchester United to do their rivals any favours. Like, the reality is we're rivals now. We are competing for the same positions on the table. So what's a fair price? Because it's
a tricky one, because look, ultimately, and look, I'll take the ownership out of this in regards to who's owning the club, because Qatar will come in, they might change things in terms of the evidence we have over the years of the Glazers. I still remember one window we sold Robin Van Persie, Nani, and Raphael for less than combined £3 million. We can't sell players. It's an absolute disaster. The only player in the last 10 years I think we've got a profit is Dan James. I think we sold him for a little bit more than what we bought him for. Man United can't sell players. And a lot of that is off the back of our own doing in terms of the wages we put these players on. The buying club can't afford the transfer fee plus the wages. So United need to take a lesser fee for that buying club to afford those wages. So a lot of it is our own wrongdoing. But those are the facts that matter. In regards to what Scott McTominay is worth, how desperate are Newcastle for that player in terms of what he'll bring? Are you in desperate need of a starting midfielder? Are you desperate need of an extra body in terms of what the motive behind it? I think it's hard in regards to putting a value on players these days, because I think a lot of the terms get thrown out. Okay, he's a £30 million player. But then you see another player go for 40 million. Well, hang on, if he's gone for 40, he's got to be at least worth 40. Yes. So it's very hard in terms of that. In regards to his contract situation at Man United, I think he's still got 2 years left on his deal. He signed under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So, look, I would be looking at it. I think if you came in with 25 or 30 million and Scott McTominay wanted to go and Erik Ten Hag said, look, okay, we're happy with this, Scott. I'm happy for you to stay. But if you want to guarantee first or sort of potential first-team football, I'm happy to accept this bid. And I think Scott McTominay would be the character who say, okay, it wouldn't be like Phil Jones who's still sitting around collecting a wage at United. I think Scott McTominay had an offer to go and sort of progress in his career. I think he would take it. So I think if you come around with £25 million, I think United genuinely look at that if Scott McTominay is happy to. Now, I think McTominay definitely wants to stay at United. But if he has an honest look with himself and if Man United bring in a Frankie de Jong sort of thing or player like that, I think Scott McTominay wouldn't force the move through, wouldn't get messy. But I think if you do come with 25 million, that would tempt all parties. But you could definitely sit there and say you wouldn't want Newcastle spending that money on that player, which hard to disagree.
Yeah, that's the debate. So there is an English tax, and English tax is real. And I've been on the record, I 100% support English tax, because when it comes to players, there's a lot less unknowns with regards to English players or players who have played in the Premier League. So I get the English tax, and I think it's valid. But I think some of the, especially some of the, I guess the sort of conversation is what some of the fees have been reported is the 35 million pounds, and Newcastle fans will turn around and go, well, we've just bought Bruno for 35 million, and now we're going to bring in Scott McTominay, who is probably, I don't think he'd be a first team player for us. We've got Joe Willock, Joe Linton, maybe Sean Longstaff's maybe a little bit sort of worse than what Scott McTominay is, but we've got them players already. And so I'm more of the belief that if we're going to buy, we are still handcuffed a little bit by FFP and things like that. If we're going to buy, we need to buy sort of genuine first-team players, and then the players we've got at the moment turn into your squad players rather than buy a squad player. That's sort of where I've sort of land on it. I think from everything that you've just said, he is a genuine Eddie Howe player. They're the ones.
The biggest plus I would give Scott McTominay, and we had this discussion around Harry Maguire as well in regards to if you want to put, sort of label positives towards him. The big thing about Scott McTominay, we talk about Premier League proven, etc. He's a guarantee to what you'll get in regards to, okay, he's not going to, as I say, win you a Premier League title, but he'll give you 40 games a season and he'll be injured for 2 of them. Like he's very fit and reliable. Again, he's not going to give you a 10 out of 10 performance, but he's not going to give you a 3 out of 10 performance. It'll be a 6 out of 10 performance. Now, again, in terms of reaching that next level, you need a little bit better than that, of course. But ultimately, throughout the course of a season, those 6 out of 10s, they add up. So ultimately, his reliability in regards to doing what it says on the tin, Scott McTominay provides that. But again, you come back to the cost. And yeah, if it's 30 million on Scott McTominay or go and getting a world-class player for 50, you might as well do the 50. But ultimately, then you get into yourself a position, well, if that 50 million pound player finds himself on the bench, is he going to react the same way Scott McTominay would? No, I think Scott McTominay would sort of fight for his spot. That 50 million pound player might react differently. So that's obviously weighs up in regards to the recruitment department of said club doing their due diligence on the character of the player.
Yeah, and that character thing's pretty much number one for us at the moment. We sort of we've been operating in the no dickheads policy, and Scott McTominay, everything that you've just said, like I said, he's an Eddie Howe prototype player.
Definitely.
Run all day, get stuck in, won't shirk anything.
You look at the evidence of every manager. Erik ten Hag uses him. Ralph Rangnick loved him. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer loved him. Jose Mourinho loved him. Sir Alex Ferguson likes him. Every manager likes him. It's the fans on Twitter don't like him, but every manager uses him. So obviously they've got a far better understanding of the game than us, and they all love him.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting off season, that's for sure. Time's getting away. I'll bring up our predicted team with this new fancy pants slide that I've just made up with our new players' heads on there, which is fantastic. Thanks to the Toon Army app for making this available to use, and makes us look a lot more professional than probably what we really are. So, look, our back five speak for ourselves. Nick Pope in goal, Kieran Trippier, Fabian Schär. He was omitted from the Swiss sort of national team over the international window, but that was before the Nottingham Forest game, and he did play the Nottingham Forest game, so his injury can't be too bad. Sven Botman, he was due for his first international cap over the weekend as well. He was sent home, I believe, with illness, but there was photos of him in training, so I expect him to be fine. Dan Burn, obviously on the left-hand side. Midfield three, we've gone with Sean Longstaff, Bruno G, and Joe Willock. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit interesting for us Newcastle United fans. Miggy Almiron has unfortunately suffered that injury. He looks like he'll be out for another 3 to 4 weeks if reports are to be believed. Now, Big Joel Linton's back from his 2-match suspension for 10 yellow cards. Now, it's the curious case of our left-hand side. We've had many different combinations run through that left wing. The latest incarnation was Alan St. Maximin against Nottingham Forest. He is the ultimate divider, I guess, of opinions. I, for one, thought he was absolutely putrid that game and deserved to be hooked at half-time. He was offering nothing. Offensively, he actually got shifted through the middle because he was really opening us up down that side of the ground. And I think the coaching staff thought he was going to be less of a problem through the middle of the park, where we had numbers in the middle that could defend that area. So Elliot Anderson come on and played an amazing half. He actually got his first start against Liverpool and was hooked after we had that red card to Nick Pope after 20 minutes. So that sort of scuppered his Premier League debut, but he was fantastic. He had one shot that was tipped over the bar. He scored a perfectly legal goal that unfortunately wasn't given for him. And he's absolutely stiff to miss out on my team for this weekend. But Joel Linton's back. I think he's going to recreate that sort of Joel Linton-Willock partnership down the left-hand side this weekend, where they're interchanging and things like that seem to work well in our sort of good unbeaten run pre-World Cup. Obviously, the big dog Isak's in ripping form up top as well. We've spoken about this, Tom. I'm not sure if you've seen much of Isak play, but he does. He's a young kid, I think 21 years old, and hopefully you get to, or hopefully for us, but maybe not for you, but I and Bobby as well on our podcast, we both see a bit of Thierry Henry in the way he plays. He's sort of that long, lanky striker.
That was going to be my question to you. If in regards to you talking about left wing, I was saying, I haven't seen enough of Isak in regards to his flexibility, but I was saying in regards to maybe even next season, in terms of Newcastle's transfers targets, in terms of sort of weak area and where's the next step in progression in terms of bringing in quality. So to take that next step, is there a situation this week where Isak potentially plays on the left-hand side. Like, does that suit his game, or he's just a centre forward?
I think he's predominantly a centre forward. We did speculate that when he first signed with Wilson as well. Can they play together? Do we play two up top? Does he play sort of in behind? I think he come on. I can't remember what game it was, but he did come on and play as sort of not a 10, but like a false 9, I guess, sort of just in behind Wilson. And he did score the winner that game. Forgive me for forgetting what game it was. It was at home, but
yeah, because when I see him play, I see very good players. Say, yeah, no, he's something about him, but something about it in the back of my mind, I just think he's not a striker. He's not. He's something a bit off the wing, be that second striker, and he might have turned into a brilliant striker. I'm sure you guys are hoping for that, but I just see, as I say, with Thierry Henry, was Thierry Henry a centre forward? Like, yes, he was, but he kind of drifted out wide. He had a little bit more to his game. So that's where I think potentially, I don't know, you sort of linked to sort of big strikers in the summer sort of thing in terms of, we'll be very interested because you did spend big money on him, but ultimately there's this big shortage of big strikers out there in regards to, obviously, United, obviously, going to be in desperate need of one. So whether Newcastle potentially look at it as well.
Yeah, I think they'll be happy with him at the moment. He does. I think his first few games, he come on his first game against Liverpool. I think Wilson was either injured or had COVID or something like that. So he sort of forced into his first game and played fantastic. And he played a couple more games and there was question marks. I think the team was struggling because he's a completely different player to what Callum Wilson is. Callum Wilson likes, back to goal. He can hold up and roll.
For me, Callum Wilson, I'm old school. Callum Wilson is a striker.
Yeah,
that's right. Just have that difference of a view of the players.
Yeah, so Isak doesn't mind picking the ball up and running, get the ball at his feet and actually run towards defenders and put them under pressure and make them make decisions and things like that. And we did find with teams who played a high line that we were able, like, he had that sort of nous and speed to get him behind and really cause some problems and things like that. He actually is a real handful. So just, I think now we're starting to learn to play with him, work out what his strengths are and stuff like that. He did miss probably over 2 months. He picked up a quad injury, I think, on international duty just after he signed. And I'm pretty sure he might have had a reoccurrence as well when he come back. Like, he sort of done it on international duty, got sent home, and during his rehab he had a reoccurrence, which sort of put him out for over 2 months, which really sort of hindered his progress. But I looked at it as a glass half full, where he gets to spend more time with his teammates and things like that. He's not under pressure to play. He can sort of slowly work his way into the club. We did have Callum Wilson and Chris Wood was playing as well. So it's not like we were screaming out for him to play. We were covered. But, yeah, he is a good player. Yeah, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts, maybe post-game after watching you play, if you could sort of pick up a bit of a Thierry Henry. I'm not saying he is Thierry Henry. Like, it's
well, hopefully I can give you a negative review, because hopefully
crazy thing. Yeah, it's a crazy thing. But yeah, if you could see that comparison, how we sort of come to that conclusion that he does play a little bit like Thierry Henry with the ball at his feet, and he likes actually.
Well, we've had the same debate in regards. So I didn't include him in my starting 11, but I'm sure if he's fit and available, we would. We had the same discussion when he came to the club in regards to Anthony Martial. Now, the career obviously didn't play out like that. In regards to, we've had the debate every single week: is he a left winger or is he a striker? Our best football this season has come with Anthony Martial. He's been absolutely brilliant this season when he's played. He's played about 10 games. He simply hasn't been fit, but he is potentially back. If he is fit, look, Weghorst has started every game he's been at the club, which is crazy. But because Martial simply hasn't been available. But if Martial is ready, now, again, do you throw him in without any matches? Maybe not. But in regards to our best football does come with Anthony Martial. So if he is fit, maybe he does start over Weghorst.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention as well, Anthony Gordon might be back from injury. They still haven't heard anything. It's early in the week for us, so we don't get much team news this early in the week. It's more of a, I was going to say Friday, might be even a Saturday now, given the late game in the weekend. But he's been injured for a couple of weeks. They were hoping he was going to get back for this game. Whether he plays or not is another thing. He's an option. Does he play on the right hand side and cut in on his left? But Jacob Murphy's done nothing wrong to be out of the side. So there is plenty of speculation and talking points and see who's going to be fit and who's not. With all that, mate, I'll ask you for your prediction for this game. How do you think it's going to end?
You haven't given much thought in a prediction. Just the one that comes to mind is probably sadly, probably a 1-1 draw. And I think potentially favours both teams. I think both teams potentially take that at the moment. Maybe you disagree, but I think both teams could sort of come out and say, okay, we've moved out of that game, sort of haven't lost any ground on each other. And I think that's a real situation. And in terms of the performances this season, the first one was a draw, probably deserved draw. Second one in the League Cup final, while Newcastle played very well, I do think Man United deserved to win quite comfortably. And ultimately, it's at home, maybe a slight advantage for Newcastle. I'd be confident with United winning. I think if United play well, I think we'll have enough. But United have always just historically struggled after international breaks. I'm not sure what Newcastle's record is after international games, but United's, it's horrible. And so ultimately, I'd be taking a draw. 1-1, that would be a prediction. I would hope United turn up. And if United do turn up, I could see maybe a similar game to the League Cup final the other week.
Yeah, well, our sort of form after the international break over the last few years has sort of mirrored our form in general, which is pretty shit. Didn't matter if there was a break or there wasn't a break. We were just no good anyway. I had that as well. I had a 1-1 draw. I think the first game at Old Trafford, like we said earlier, was a bit of an arm wrestle and sort of not many clear-cut chances from memory for both teams. The League Cup final, we give away 2 poor goals and we huffed and puffed, but never really looked like scoring, to be honest. That's how the game went.
Look, us without Casemiro, it's a big hole without Casemiro.
Yes, that was my next point. I mean, I'd hazard to say be comfortably winning he wouldn't be comfortably winning the Player of the Year. He'd be coming runner-up comfortably in the Player of the Year. I think Marcus Rashford's probably got that.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
It's hard. Like, look, even we look at Lisandro Martinez has been absolutely brilliant, but the difference Casemiro has made, it's crazy. I knew he was a good player. I didn't realise he was this good. He has made the world of difference to United. But ultimately, I look at Scott McTominay. He's not getting himself suspended for 8 games a season. That's what Casemiro has done. Now, I think Casemiro is very harshly treated by the referees in terms of I don't think he should have been suspended for this long. But the facts are the facts that he has missed a big chunk of this season through suspension, and his deputy, Scott McTominay, has to come in, and the best ability is availability.
Yeah, so we with the same thing with Bruno. We really missed him when he wasn't in the middle of the park, and he plays the same role. He picks it up off the defenders and looks to move the ball forward towards our goal rather than sideways and backwards and sort of stifling attacks. So we do understand what Casemiro brings because Bruno brings exactly the same thing on our side of things. That'll just about wrap us up, I reckon, mate. Do you want to give your podcast a plug when your review will be up for this game, just in case we manage to nick all 3 points? We have a few psychos who like to listen to opposition fans' podcasts and things like that after they lose and see what they say about us. So, give your plug, mate.
The United Pubcast it's obviously originated in a pub setting. Now COVID sort of moved everything online. But if you do, if Man United do sort of drop points, you do want to come and watch us have a bit of a moan. United Pubcast will be Monday night, Sydney time. Obviously, as we sort of said at the start, it's Monday morning kickoff time here in Sydney. So a little bit later Monday night, we'll be live having a bit of a mo. Fingers crossed it's a positive discussion on our half. But everyone is welcome. Man United fans or Newcastle fans. And I'm not just saying this you have me on, but I have enjoyed sort of, can I say resurgence? I'm not sure if that's the right term in regards to Newcastle, but back at the top table in regards
the
to
awakening. We've been calling it.
It has thrown an interest in sort of spanner into it and something a little bit different. And Newcastle fans in the build-up to that League Cup final did get under my skin, and now ultimately I'll take that as a compliment in regards to maybe you're doing something right. But it is good to have, as say, a traditional team back at the right end of the table.
Yeah, don't feel bad about that, mate. We've got under a lot of, not just as fans, the players have got under a lot of people's skins this season. I think there's been probably 4 or 5 games where the opposition have actually been fined for failing to control their players after playing Newcastle, and we haven't actually had a fine for any of that. So, don't feel bad if people are getting under your skin because that seems to be the way we're working at the moment. But I'll leave it there, mate. That'll wrap us up for the night. Really appreciate you jumping on. Good luck for the rest of the season for you guys as well. I hope Erik sort of delivers everything that you've hoped for after this weekend. Not so much this weekend, but thanks for joining us again, Tom. Love
pleasure,
having
mate.
You on. You're a great chat. For you guys, for our sort of fans and supporters, our review for the game will be out Monday night as well. We'll record Monday night, either be out later Monday night or first thing Tuesday morning. Might be Monday night now. I think the clocks are going back for us on Saturday night, I think. So, that is, we might get it out Monday night for everyone. So, once again, thanks, Tom. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a like and a comment. Tell your friends to subscribe to our channel, even if they don't watch it. Subscribers look good. Views are better, so watch it. If you want to watch it twice, watch it twice. It helps us as well. But that'll do it for now. Thanks very much, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, mate.